Kia ora he uri tēnei o Te Atiawa me Taranaki, ko Alice Te Punga Somerville Lahau. I teach at the Faculty of Māori and Indigenous Studies at the University of Waikato, and one of the great joys of the last 3 years of my life has been a Marsden funded project called Writing the New World, Indigenous Texts 1900 to 1975. The project spends time going all around the region, 1900 to 1975, a period that we actually don't know that much about. We spend a lot of time talking about kind of first adventures and connections with Europeans coming into the region, and we talk about more recent things, but particularly in the area of writing and literary studies, which is my own background. It's kind of like what really happened between, you know, the end of the kind of contact colonial period and Albert Wendt, like what happened in that time in between. Writing the New World has brought together 16 different Indigenous researchers from all around the region with really different backgrounds and different perspectives and different skills. And the podcast is intended to feature their views, their ideas, their experiences, so that you also can have an opportunity to connect with this writing, but also with the region that it comes from. The episode of the podcast is going to be hosted by the doctoral student Wanda Yeremia Allen, who worked as an MPhil scholarship student on this project, but who also has done paid research connected to the project before moving into that work, and since then has moved into doctoral studies, extending the work that she did as an MPhil student. Wanda is going to be the voice that you'll hear every week, asking questions, engaging with our different researchers, and please feel free to share them. The whole concept of the podcast is so much that happens at universities, really are things that people beyond the university might be interested in hearing about. We're interested in celebrating the writing from this time period, but also celebrating the work of the amazing researchers that have worked on the project. And so we are hopeful that members of their communities and the members of the communities that produce this writing in the first place would find these podcasts to be interesting, and maybe would have them ask some questions and feel interested in knowing a bit more.
Kia rana! Welcome to our Cook Islands language series of Writing the New World podcast. Today you'll be hearing from Mary Lee Steen, a wonderful researcher at the Waikato University, who will be talking to you about reconnecting with tūpuna through her archival research.
Mau I te ko, mau I te ere. Mau I te ko, mau I te ere. Kia ora ana tātou katoa I te aroa atupaka o te atua. Ko Mary Lee Steen tōku ingoa, ko Amos Aukuso tōku metua tāne, ko Kathleen Aukuso tōku metua waine, ko Whale e Whia Aukuso tōku ngā metua ruau I te tua o tōku metua tāne, ko David Dean e hi o Atiari Tini Tōkeu, tōku ngā metua ruau I te tua o tōku metua waine, ko Billy Barbie e Phoebe, tōku autuakana, ko Te Are tōku taina, ko Matthew John e Amosa tōku au tungane, ko Paige Meari Kate Dean tōku smaiti, ko ngā puariki tōku waka, me te enua o Ararau, enua o Ru ki te Moana, me te uanga tua ke u o Dean o Amuri. Ko Dean tōku ingoa kupu tangata. Amuri e si au e hi. Amuri e si au e hi. Kia ora ana. My name is Mary-Lise Verena Frankie Dean. This name was given to me by my parents and is an ensemble of a few close friends and my mother's sister. I come from the Tuakeu Atai families from Osaki Cook Islands and the Okuso and Māti family from Samoa. The research that I have been conducting throughout the Writing the New World project is looking at literature written by people of Cook Island Māori descent. While researching this specific topic, I had to keep within the time period, which was 1900 to 1955. The opportunities that the Cook Island Language Week presents academically is that it exposes society to the culture and the language. I was raised in Tokoroa, which has been nicknamed the 16th island of the Cook Islands. This name was given to the town because of the population of Cook Islanders that have made this town their home for many generations. I bring Tokoroa into the conversation because at one of the local high schools, Cook Island Language Week is a huge celebration. People of all cultures and ethnicities are exposed to the beauty of the Cook Islands, including, but not limited to, the language. At the University of Waikato, throughout the week that is assigned to Cook Islands language, again, this exposes people from all walks of life and ethnicities to the Cook Islands culture. There are different activities daily, such as being given a chance to make a katu, learn dances, and you can even learn a few phrases throughout the week. There are always people taking up the opportunity that are not of Cook Island descent, which is really amazing to me. I believe that it is possible to incorporate Cook Island language, texts and literature, which are written in both Cook Island Māori and English, into Cook Island Language Week. A way in which this can be done is possibly compiling a pamphlet or zine of Cook Island literature and passing that throughout the university as they do with the Nexus or the Uber Eats vouchers. Another way this could be done is by publishing poems written by Cook Islanders and posting them around the university, whether it be in elevators or on the bulletin boards that are splashed around campus. I wasn't given a particular periodical in which I was to look at throughout the Writing the New World project. My focus was looking at all kinds of literature through the time period of 1900 and 1955, written by Cook Islanders. However, whilst researching in the Alexander Turnbull Library in Wellington, they did have a church magazine by the name of Tōria Katurika. Unfortunately, I am no way fluent in Cook Island Māori, so a lot of what was being said in this magazine flew right over my head. Another periodical that I came across was called Tumu Kōrero, and there was a journal for any readers. Most of it is in Cook Island Māori, so again, it went over my head. In all honesty, I have no idea about the value in terms of money. However, it was to be treated with a lot of respect. I was only to look at the magazine if I was using the stands that they have for their books. I wasn't allowed to have a pen near, and I had to be extremely careful when turning the page. I think this says a lot about the value of these pieces, and I have no idea who thought they would be valuable. This valuable, I should say. I say this as someone who was looking at the institution as being something with Western ideals, so what they place value in is different to myself as a Cook Islander. I'm curious as to whether or not they value it because of how long ago it was published. Both of these texts were found at the Alexander Turnbull Library, and I'm unsure how they got there. I was only in Wellington for the weekend and did not get to spend as much time as I would have liked looking at these pieces carefully. So I spent most of my time quickly going through them to see what was in it. I unfortunately didn't get to speak to anyone who would know about the stamps and the passport that these pieces would have carried if they were human. Before embarking on this research journey, I did not know about these periodicals. I was raised in a Seventh-day Adventist family. I wonder if this plays into the reason as to why I had not heard about Tōria Katurika before. If this isn't why, then another reason may be that unfortunately I have not looked into any kind of Cook Islands literature before. The same can be said for Tumu Kōrero. For Tōria Katurika, it was a compilation of writers as it was published more as a sort of notice board in book form. It mainly kept the Catholics in the Cook Islands up to date on things that were happening at that time. Tumu Kōrero, I believe, was for anyone and everyone that wanted to read it. Unfortunately, I am unsure as to where either of the pieces were published. I do know that it was circulated around the many islands that are populated in the Cook Islands. I am unsure if it made its way to New Zealand during the time it was being published. The audience that Tōria Katurika was intended for was the many members of the Catholic churches in the Cook Islands. Tumu Kōrero is mentioned before was for whoever could get their hands on it.
While in Wellington looking through the archives at the Alexander Turnbull Library, I saw that the library had a newspaper printed onto tapa. The newspaper was called the Cook Islands Gazette. One of the curators organised for us to be able to view it. I admit I did get a little emotional to see the newspaper information being printed onto tapa. In the archives, they only had the front and back covers in storage. I looked through it to see if there was anything special happening, because I wanted to know if there was any reason as to why this issue was being published onto tapa. I couldn't find one, so I let my imagination run wild with finding a reason for this. Being able to see the information was exciting because I was able to see what was important to the people of those times. The significance of finding how special this issue was because there were previous issues and issues that came after it. They were printed onto paper. So I wanted to see if there was any special reason for this issue being printed onto tapa.
I enjoyed these pieces because it gave me a look into what life was like during those times. What was being published was what was important to those people. There wasn't a goodbye letter from writers in these periodicals. However, if there were, I believe it would be just to let the readers know that they're either migrating out of the Cook Islands or converting to another religion. Torea Katorika has led me to see if there are any other kinds of denominations with their own magazines written in Cook Island Māori. For Indigenous researchers to be conducting this kind of research, I think it's like talking to our tupuna who have passed on. This is what they would have told us if we could speak to them. I believe that our tupuna are finally breathing a sigh of relief that their descendants have finally laid their eyes and hands on the products that they have made. It's finally made it into the right hands.